There are a lot of myths out there about JJ McCarthy, bad takes, narratives. So to help me bust those myths, I brought on Thor Nystrom. Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day, each and every day. I appreciate you all so very much. If you are indeed new here, hello, my name is Luke. I'll be your host, and you can find this show. Just search out Locked On Vikings wherever you find your favorite podcasts, whether it is a podcast listening app like SiriusXM, YouTube, or even Amazon Fire and Roku. If you just download the Locked On Minnesota Sports app, you can find it there. Today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly. So join your friends and relive the past, which was the last time you were happy. Download Monopoly Go now, free on the App Store or Google Play. Today's show is a big, long interview with Thor Nystrom of a bajillion places. I think Fantasy Pros is, I guess the main one you would say, but he writes about the draft, lives, eats, breathes draft. We'll talk about everything, mostly JJ McCarthy, a little bit about the undrafted free agents. In that interview, he says that he's got a thing coming out next week. That was as we were recording it. I believe as this one's going to go up, that should be out. So go check out his undrafted free agent review. And he probably goes as in-depth into everybody's undrafted free agent classes like anybody in the whole draft space. So definitely go check that stuff out. But it's a big, long interview, and I want to make sure that there's enough time for all of it. So let's dive right in. All right, everybody, here with Thor Nystrom, perhaps the most prolific draft guy on Draft Analyst outside of people who are on TV like Mel Kiper. You're everywhere, man. You're on every show. You've got a big board that is something like 850 players deep. Did I get that about right?
Yeah. Something like that. Yeah. The 500 board with the 500 cons. But yeah, we go deeper with that in the position ones rankings, which is good for UDFA time.
Yeah. So I think if you was just Mr. Draft, but nowadays, as of lately, you are Mr. JJ McCarthy, which is great for me because I like JJ McCarthy. You're on another level, but that means if he totally flames out, you're catching all the heat, and I'm good.
That's fine. I'm totally okay with that.
You're taking that from me.
Yeah, just like I was at the beginning of the process in January, early February, when everyone was saying he was a late round 2 guy, and I came out and said, no, he's a top 10 overall prospect. I was fine with wherever that went to. I was pretty confident in my read, and I'm pretty confident that guy is going to be a star in the NFL as well.
So, okay, give me the argument then. So there are haters, of course. Most of these haters, a lot of the people who didn't want the Vikings to take McCarthy were more worried about a big trade up, paying a bunch of first round picks. And now that didn't happen, they're a little bit more amenable to it. But there are also people who are just God, they didn't get Penix. Now they had to settle. What do you say to that?
Not get Penix and had to settle.
Yeah, no, Penix, he did go earlier, but there are Penix ride or dies that are man, they couldn't get Penix. JJ McCarthy is such a disappointing outcome.
Oh, yeah. Well, I took that bumbling Terry Fontenot taking Penix ahead of us as our the gift that we got as far as the illegal tampering. I'm taking that as the early gift that we got from the NFL.
Thank you, Kirk Cousins.
Exactly. The Drake May thing, I totally got that. And I know that there's the reports of what the Vikings were, engaging with that and the negotiations and different stuff like that. I think when you look at the price point of what they ended up paying for McCarthy, look, I have McCarthy ranked higher on my board. I like McCarthy apples to apples more than Drake May. I understand people that like Drake May more than McCarthy. I think objectively, anyone looking at the price point of what was paid for JJ McCarthy against what the ask was to get up to number 3 for Drake May, I think anyone has to say that the Vikings made the correct decision for that. And by the way, there was all the reports that the Patriots in any trade with the Vikings, that the guy that they needed to know that they were going to get was JJ McCarthy. So it seems like there was a sort of death pact heading in, a suicide pact between the Patriots and the Vikings of one way or another. We're both coming out with Drake May and JJ McCarthy. but I think the Vikings played it correctly. I think that's pretty clear. You give up that nominal price to get McCarthy at number 10. You also pay him a lower slot there at the, the slightly lower
that'll
cap.
matter by year 4. Yeah.
Yeah. So you have that. And then of course you retain that second first round pick that came into play later on. You had that crazy historical anomaly with the 14 offensive players off the board first, which pushed down the defenders. The guy, Dallas Turner, who had been the odds on favorite at the sportsbook against the entire field, the entire process to be the first defender off the board, ends up getting pushed down further than anyone could have assumed that he would go the entire spring. Ends up getting to that 17 slot, and Kwesi ends up striking with some of the extra draft equity, coming out of that first day with JJ McCarthy and Dallas Turner, and you're keeping your 2025 first round pick was, I think, beyond anyone's wildest dreams, whether you see JJ McCarthy like I do or not. And by the way, Luke, I'm the JJ McCarthy guy. I'm higher on him than most. I would say that I am lower on Dallas Turner than most. So I think that probably washes, when you're talking about both those guys qualitatively.
Okay, imagine an alternate universe here where the Vikings just bottom out in 2023. They don't win any, Josh Dobbs sanity games or anything like that. And they and they draft, let's say, like 4th or 5th overall. But instead of taking a quarterback, they take the first defender off the board. And then in the second round, they take a quarterback, and that quarterback is JJ McCarthy. Like, couldn't you see that world? Like, where they end up, it's like a totally different world where they somehow end up with the same players. It's weird how that kind of stuff turns out.
Like, but in the McCarthy getting to the second round, how do you mean?
Yeah, just alternate universe where he does fall. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, any universe where we could have gotten him, I'm down with that. I don't know where. I don't think he was going to fall that far in any universe, but it is interesting.
No, for sure. But like the world where they go, oh, we're gonna just like let the season go, and we're not gonna overpay for a quarterback, and we're gonna like be responsible and value and not get greedy and all that stuff, and then still end up with it. Like that. How stoked would you be on that world? And like that, well, that kind of happened.
Oh, yes, for sure. Yeah. Perceptually coming into the process, for sure. Yeah. Cause I mean, people viewed Dallas Turner as top 10 overall prospect with a bullet. Like I said, the sports books all the way up until bell open on Thursday saw Dallas Turner as the first. He's going to be the first defender off the board. And, even the perception of JJ McCarthy coming into the process, which was wrong and was based on stuff coming into the 2023 season. I think there was people need to understand, people with my job, not all of them are watching college football all the way throughout the season. And so some of those rankings where we come out of the national title game, let's just say that they haven't been based on watching the entire catalog of 2023 film yet. So they're based on antiquated stuff from before. That's why, like, people were surprised when I came out early on with the thing of the JJ's the top 10 overall guy. But I was pretty confident in that read because I had watched the entire 2023 season. It's pretty clear on the field that that's the kind of prospect he was.
Yeah, I think I'm up to 10 of the 15 games, so I'm getting there. I'll be there by the end of the week that I'm recording this, but I want to get you going on that take, though. I really want you to go into detail on it, so that'll come up next. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. You can find anything there if you want to gamble on some sports, whether it's an NFL future like division odds. The Vikings are plus 250 something at FanDuel right now, or even like rookie of the year futures. Dallas Turner favored to be defensive rookie of the year. Or you can go gamble on a baseball game, whatever else you want to find. And right now you can get $150 in bonus bets, win or lose, if you visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and sign up there. So if you are new and sign up at FanDuel.com/lockedon, you can get $150 in bonus bets back from your first bet, no matter what it is and whether or not it wins or loses. It's just free gambling money, so go claim it on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Moving right along with this episode of the Locked On Vikings podcast. Hey, everybody, when you are done here, you can go check out Locked On Minnesota Sports. They have a 24/7 YouTube stream that's Minnesota sports talk all day, every single day. It's got this show. It's got Locked On Wolves, a lot going on there. Locked On Wild, Twins, Gophers, roundtables on the Locked On Minnesota Sports channel. Go check that out. All right, Thor, let's get down to it. You have JJ McCarthy as a top 10 pick. pick. There are people in the world that would scoff at you, that would laugh at you, that would sneer at you. What do you have to say to them? What is your defense for putting JJ McCarthy at, I mean, he literally was a top 10 pick definitionally, but give me the description, give me the take.
Yeah, they did all spring, certainly, especially initially, that he was a top 10 pick and he was a perfect fit for the Vikings was the take. And and why? Well, first of all, the physical tools are all there. You'll see them on the film. He proved the concept of that at the combine. 6 fastest, 3 cone, regardless of position, at 17 pounds heavier than his Michigan bio, which also checked the size concerns. The arm strength, which is so obvious on tape, including when he is on the move. This is going to be one of the things that I think Vikings fans find funnest about him, is that he can throw the ball on a rope, including to the opposite hash, 3 sectors down the field while he is scrambling in full movement, going to the opposite side. He can whip that ball to the other side of the field, down to that 3rd sector of the field on a frozen rope. The arm strength there at the combine, 61 mile per hour max velo throw, 1 mile per hour underneath the NFL record for that, which Josh Allen had that record. Joe Milton tied it at the combine. There are quarterbacks such as Joe Milton where they have arm strength and they are a good athlete, but they do not work in conjunction with one another on the field. That is the far more common thing. JJ McCarthy, those two things absolutely work together with one another on the field. That is what makes the projection to the next level so exciting for him. Last year, his completion percentage against what was by far the best strength of schedule of any of these that the top 6 quarterbacks faced, by far and away, 72.3% completions. When he was scrambling, 71.4. He doesn't lose any accuracy whatsoever, which is utterly absurd, particularly when you consider the context.
The throw on the run is so pretty.
Oh gosh, beautiful. And people don't understand like how rare that specific thing is. You just don't really see that. Caleb Williams got his flowers for some of that stuff, but McCarthy, I didn't feel like that was
insane too.
Yeah, I didn't feel like that was talked about enough with him. And there's reasoning for this. It is not fluky. You see it when it was a consistent element of his tape. The reasoning for this is McCarthy takes his mechanics with him wherever he goes. The eyes are always downfield with the upper body cocked to throw and the lower body in a platform under him. Like he doesn't get crazy.
The feet stay wide, which is what you want.
Exactly. Yeah.
You don't narrow it. That's a Drake May thing. We talked about that a ton on Locked On Vikings. Yeah,
exactly. Like no matter where he is, like if he's going out, like no matter where he is on behind the line of scrimmage, you always see he's like contorting. It's like with AI when it's like contorting, or like he's always contorting in such a way so that he will be able to immediately get the pill out if he sees the look, right? And so it's like he'll be in the most advantageous throwing platform to just immediately dispense the thing. Which is just, again, a really cool element of his game. He's not looking to bail. He can buy the time as much as he wants, but he'll steal the yards real quick. If it's like, all right, it's not here, then he'll steal 10 yards really, really quickly. Underrated athlete for sure. You saw the handoff when he was a true freshman to Blake Corum in the Big Ten title game, where Blake Corum breaks it out to the 3rd level. It's like a 60-yard touchdown run. JJ McCarthy sprints past him in the open field, then has to wait for Blake Corum near the goal line so that JJ McCarthy can get a couple blocks for him to spring him into the end zone. You see the athleticism there, but also the dog. Like you don't see other quarterbacks doing stuff like that. The accuracy with him last year, number 5 in the FBS and on target rate. Again, just in general with that, and that accuracy is coming again against the best of the best competition in an NFL concepts. Comes out of the 12 personnel pro style offense that Michigan ran last season under a sitting NFL head coach. And that offense, they threw over the middle, the intermediate concepts, 10 to 19 yards down the field between the hashes, dang near more than any other team in the FBS. And JJ McCarthy was tremendous at that concept. I'm trying to pull the numbers here. He had an absolutely ludicrous completion percentage on that. Something like 80% on those throws over the middle was one of the top guys in the nation.
There's this interesting thing on on that. So when I was watching pre-draft, I was pretty tunnel visioned on mechanics because that was what I was trying to learn, and I was doing a series at Arifas on Substack and stuff. So I didn't like look at the reads as much as I was looking at like the throwing and the mechanics and stuff, which might have colored. Like if I'm super wrong, that's probably why. But then now that he's a Viking, and I'm like, okay, I gotta look at the reads. Like, let's get a little more holistic here. Whole bunch of McVay concepts. Whole bunch of Kevin O'Connell. I see flag. I see water. I see, choice, a bunch of those flood rollout stuff. Like the same exact like, especially anytime they line up in dubs on like 2x2, you're going to see some like a very, very McVay style read, which I'm sure the Vikings loved.
1000%. There is a lot of similarities there, between the 12 personnel thing and between the aerial concepts. People might not realize it on the surface because they think of the Harbaugh thing as run first. They think of O'Connell as more of a passing guy. The early down preference of those two guys is the one dissimilarity. Everything else is extremely similar. So I found the stat. Last season, of the top quarterbacks in this draft class, McCarthy had the most intermediate completions over the middle. But here's the thing. He posted a ludicrous 85.6 adjusted completion percentage on 97 such attempts. He is tremendous at peppering the ball over the middle, those heat ring throws. He's so good at it. Luke, you've seen him with he comes over the top like the major league hurler, and it's heat ring is the only way that I can describe it. He's got the 98 mile per hour heater. He will beat the defender to get that ball into his receiver's hands. Now, one modification on this, a nitpick that people have, which is fair, and it's a mechanical tweak that he's working on. You saw that he would have sort of that same motion of taking the big step and then throwing it sort of the same way with the heat rings when he was going further down the field. He has begun to modulate that to get more of the loft, subtract some velocity to get more loft, as you saw both at his combine throwing session, which was tremendous, and at his pro day throwing session, which was tremendous, where he was almost hitting the ceiling of their indoor throwing facility. But you see him taking less of the lead step in both those things. If people want to go back and look at the cut-ups of those, taking less of the lead step and then getting more loft on that and trajectory on those ones. So that's something I think that's going to be worked on a little bit more. But the intermediate stuff, that's where that stuff is playing up. That sort of inclination. Mm-hmm. He's just coming over the top and just firing that thing in. And him and Drake May were easily the two best guys in this class at those things. That is something that Kevin O'Connell's offense is based upon, the aerial component of it.
Yeah. So do you think that as he sort of adjusts and the throwing motion becomes a bit of a work in progress as he's changing things, how long, if at all, do you think that keeps him off the field?
I think that JJ McCarthy is a guy that could start week one. I don't believe that Drake May is a guy that could start week one, unless you would be asking for trouble with that. You could argue about the ceiling of those two guys against each other, but I do think with JJ McCarthy, you could. I'm not arguing that you should. I mean, that's the prerogative of the Vikings coaching staff. Bring him into training camp. You're going to weigh the development, which you think would be better for JJ's development against Darnold and him in training camp. What do you think is better for the short-term viability of the team? But it ain't going to wreck that kid. JJ McCarthy, people forget that, and you talk about the bad narratives of JJ McCarthy. I heard over and over again this spring of it's just a Colossus team and any quarterback would have won with them.
We'll get to that.
Okay. Yeah. So I won't get into that, but as far as coming in immediately, it's again, very similar stylistic offense. And you have already seen him excel at the concepts that are leveraged in that Viking system. And of course, the supporting cast so good around him. O'Connell's not going to put him in situations that, right now that are going to over leverage JJ McCarthy. I think you could, but again, that comes down to the prerogative of the coaching staff. If they think it's better off for him initially to learn behind Darnold, I think that's totally fine as well. If that's what they have gauged is better for his development initially.
And that's what Sam Darnold is here for. Okay. So next up, let's do a little myth busting, and then I do want to get your thoughts on some undrafted free agents because I know you're working on that right now. So that'll all be next. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by Monopoly Go, the hit twist on classic Monopoly, where you can be as friendly or unfriendly with your friends as you want. You can download it free at the App Store or Google Play, and you can get into hyper-competitive games of Monopoly, just like you used to play at home, where you can destroy your friends' properties with a wrecking ball. You can also steal all their money in a bank heist. So that's pretty fun. Or you can work together and try to build each other up in team challenges as well. So find whatever you want to do at Monopoly Go. Once again, you can download that for free on Google Play or the App Store. Keeping it rolling here with the Locked On Vikings podcast, talking to Thor Nystrom, the world's foremost JJ McCarthy fan, perhaps the most diehard JJ McCarthy fan who isn't also a Michigan Wolverines fan. I love it. I love it so much. Okay, so there's a lot of we'll go with narratives. That's a nice charged word about JJ McCarthy, and maybe the most prevalent one. We'll do the Socratic exercise, and I'll play the part of the guy that says, well, he ran the ball the whole time. I didn't even trust him. Michigan didn't use him. He threw the ball 10 times a game because all they ever want. He's a handoff machine. Why would you draft a handoff machine top 10?
Yeah, I mean, on early downs for sure, which put McCarthy into more of the third mediums and longs than most of these top quarterbacks. Again, against the best defenses in the nation by the numbers, including that during that college football run. Yeah. And JJ McCarthy was better by the numbers than any of those guys in those situations, those high leverage ones, the third downs, the third and longs, et cetera, when the defense knew what was coming. Which, by the way, you ask any offensive coordinator, quarterback coach, evaluator, the cut up that they prefer most to watch about quarterbacks, if they could only watch a quick cut up, what would they choose? They always choose the third down one, because that's when the defense knows what's coming. They don't care about the first down screen pass to the outside cut up of Bo Nix's or any other quarterback, because it's empty calorie stuff. They don't care about that.
Take play action away. Yeah. Take the like read away, take any hesitancy away from the edges, and then see what happens when it's,
they want to know how you do when the defense knows what's coming and is trying to take that away. And who is the guy where the defense can't stop it anyway? McCarthy was the best at that.
Yeah, it like goes more to like the game manager thing. But what about the idea along a similar lines that would go something like, well, of course, Michigan was successful. He had, 3 of his linemen got drafted, a tight end got drafted, 2 wide receivers got drafted, his running back got drafted. What this guy wasn't driving the bus, right? It was just his supporting cast that was driving everything. What do you say to that?
Yeah, when JJ McCarthy signed with Michigan, people wanted Jim Harbaugh fired. Michigan was coming off a 2-4 season, the COVID season, and Jim Harbaugh had to go into the president's office of Michigan. When he came out, people didn't know if he was employed again or not. Jim Harbaugh was forced to take a reduction in salary in order to keep his job. Fortunately for Jim Harbaugh, JJ McCarthy had kept his commitment during the recruiting process, and not only that, helped Jim Harbaugh begin to accrue this recruiting class that ended up turning around the Michigan program. They ended up going to 3 straight college football playoffs. That true freshman year, JJ McCarthy was coming in off the bench and doing stuff every single game. He should have been starting immediately as a true freshman. They just had some deference to this guy, Cade McNamara. And then, of course, the last 2 years, JJ McCarthy starts to go back there and win the title that last year. But JJ McCarthy was the impetus for turning that entire ship around. Jim Harbaugh right now, you wonder why he loves JJ McCarthy so much. He almost got fired from his alma mater, and instead 3 years later he is on the Mount Rushmore of it and got to voluntarily choose to leave to take that Chargers head coaching job.
Yeah. I'm really excited to like dive a little bit more into JJ McCarthy's backstory for the Everyman series, which is something that happens in the summer here on Locked On Vikings, which is kind of my low key, my favorite time of the year on here. But enough plugging. Okay. Let's transition to undrafted free agents. You're working on your undrafted free agent rankings. Tell me about that project. And then if you've got any interesting names, interesting calls, guys you think are going to make the roster, who's the Najee Thompson, who's the Ivan Pace, talk to me.
The Vikings last year raised my eyebrow because last year it was clear they had reassessed the way that they were doing what I call the dessert draft or the second draft, the UDFA free-for-all that occurs immediately after the draft concludes on Saturday night. You start seeing all the UDFA signings just start spilling out. In previous seasons, I had sort of railed against the Vikings for not having the investment in that process that I felt that they should. It's the easiest, cheapest way to extract free value for me in the aggregate. Not every single one, because these are, of course, longer shots. But if you if you invest some money into it, we're talking at a measure of hundreds of thousands of dollars, which is
where their paycheck doubles if they make the team.
Yeah, we're talking pennies in the couch for an NFL franchise. But the people would be shocked by the percentage of NFL snaps every single year that are taken by UDFAs. My last check, it was around 22 to 25%. So you should be putting more, in my opinion, every franchise should be putting more resources into that. That was something that clearly the Vikings had done last year. that has carried over into this year. I have not stacked the UDFA classes yet, but that will be coming next week. I usually wait till Thursday, Friday of the following week after the draft to do that, because we get UDFA signings throughout that next week that come out officially. But I will tell you this, the Vikings got 2 of my top 10 available UDFAs. And one of them was number 4 that overall. That was Gabriel Murphy. And then Dwight McLaughlin was number 10. In addition to that, the Vikings got 8 other guys, so 10 total that were on my 500 board coming into the draft. That's pretty good. Pretty good. That the Vikings will be for sure one of the top 10 teams, and I'm pretty sure that they will be in the top 5 based on the metrics. We'll have to see on that, once, because that's just a math thing once that goes. But based on eyeballing this, I think that's the way it's going to go. Another very impressive showing coming off a tremendous draft. You go right into that UDFA thing. They came out firing right out of a great draft. They go in and got super duper aggressive and grabbed some of the best players that had not gotten drafted.
Well, hey, look, you don't do anything on Friday. Kwesi comes in on Saturday, well rested, attack the process. No picks to make, no pressers to do. It was great. So give me the names. So here's what I'm looking at is the roster as it stands before you put the undrafted guys into it. Off-ball linebacker feels like the best opportunity for one of these long shots to make the team. Plus, you got somebody like Gabriel Murphy. You've got the I forget his name, McLaughlin in the corner, the Arkansas corner. That those guys were guys that were supposedly those were on big boards. Those were supposed to be drafted that didn't get drafted. But then you've also got somebody like Dallas Gant out of Toledo, plays a lot of special teams. There's always a path to the roster there. So call a shot. All right, it is April 30th. This is as we were recording this. Call your April 30th shot. 2 undrafted guys that'll make the team.
I'm gonna say Murphy, and I'm going to say, man, it's tough for me with the 2 linebackers because I think one of them does for sure. I like Richter too. Richter and Gant, I both like.
Richter's more of an edge, right?
I rank him as a linebacker.
As like a cover guy.
Yeah, you could go either way with that. But he's a skilled athlete. We'll talk about that in a second. But I love Gant. I'll say Gant, but one of those 2 guys makes the team. Which would be my hedge on it. I love the way that you set that up, and it was very clearly the way that the Vikings saw it heading in. I'll tell you why. Gabriel Murphy was the number 2 edge, number 4 overall guy on my UDFA board. They go out and get him, and he was number 1 overall on a lot of other people's boards when they came in. Linebacker, so my 3 top linebackers, UDFA, they got 2 of them. Richter was my number 2. Gant was my number 3. My top available UDFA cornerback was McLaughlin. So the Vikings very clearly were like, those 3 positions, we're going out and we're getting guys that should have been drafted. All 4 of those guys I just mentioned had draftable grades on my board. I would assume, I don't know if they have commented about this publicly, I would assume that the Vikings had draftable grades on those guys. They end up filtering out, and the Vikings got aggressive with it. Just some quick comments on those guys' games. Gabriel Murphy absolutely has NFL talent. He gets after the quarterback for sure. The reason he went undrafted is because he has crazy short arms. That's the only reason with him. The NFL gets punitive with the short arm guys. So his game, the other thing with him, and he's a solid athlete, 92 percentile athlete, almost 93rd. But one thing you notice with him, and I like this, he gets the quickest jumps you'll see off the snap. He's one of those guys that likes to time the snap. And when he times it right, he descends on the quarterback as quick as possible. There's a thought out there that he does that to overcome like the lack of length because he doesn't want the opposing tackle's hands on him because that's where he can get in trouble with the lack of length.
Or no, get off is good. Everybody drills it. So yeah.
Yes, his get off is awesome. And like I said, the timing of the snap thing is tremendous with that kid. But that's the thing to watch. But he should have been drafted one way or the other. I don't care. Like just look at his production going back multiple years. He was at North Texas and was fabulous before that. He goes to UCLA and was tremendous there as well. And he has the twin brother, but I don't know a nice way to say this, but we got the good Murphy. We got the better Murphy. I'll put it that way. So and then the 2 linebackers, I had Richter 235 on my board. I had Gant 244. Richter was productive at Air Force. I thought he was underrated and a good athlete as well. 6'1", 248. 99th percentile size adjusted athlete on Richter. He got slept on a bit. You mentioned sort of the utility of, and maybe this was why he ends up going undrafted. You put him on the edge, get him after the quarterback. Do you keep him as the off ball guy?
Is it I don't know what he's supposed to be kind of thing, and then nobody wants to take on that mystery?
Exactly. I did him as the linebacker because I think he has enough skills there. And even though you've seen him attack forward with that stuff, I think, especially with the athleticism, some of the things that I saw on his tape, I think that he can be the off ball guy with his dimensions. I think it's a tougher ask to have him on the edge consistently. However, you can absolutely move him up, and especially in Flores' system, situationally, you can send them off the edge. When you're moving guys around and doing the crazy looks that they do. Dallas Gant, I also thought he was slept on. A guy who earlier in his career heads in out of high school, was a top recruit, goes to Ohio State, didn't work out there, transfers to Toledo. He was awesome at Toledo. And I think that people overlook that because the MAC has come down in recent years. And then he tests, and he was, 63rd percentile athlete. So maybe that's why the NFL ends up overlooking him. But 6'2.5", 228. And like I said, just fabulous last season on the field. I like his game, and I believe that he should have gotten drafted. And then lastly, with McLaughlin, people keep in mind this with McLaughlin, starter for 4 years in the SEC. All 4 of his active years, he was starting in the SEC, first at LSU, then at Arkansas. And he might have been he's a victim of 2 things. Number one, circumstance that was out of his control. He got a turf toe that ends up wrecking last year when he was playing tremendous. I'll get into that in a second. The second one, athleticism, 4.54 RAS. The question with him is going to come down to, is the athleticism nullifying of him in the NFL? If it's not, he's going to stick around. Tall kid, 6'2", 185, and very skilled on the field. Last year was the breakout season until that injury wrecked it in early November. He had around a 92 PFF overall grade and a 92 around PFF coverage grade at the point when that turf toe came up and bit him and pulled him off the field. Arkansas had a weird thing. Their entire team with injuries last year were sort of going down like flies, but McLaughlin was playing fabulous until that happened. If it wasn't for that injury, I think he ends up getting drafted 6th, 7th round just on the play on the field, even with the athleticism thing. Obviously, he is a good fit for Flores' defense with the way that they play, being that long corner. And he, like I said, the skills are there. Will the athleticism can he play with that athleticism at the next level? If he can, if it's enough that he will stick around.
So where can I find this undrafted free agent thing when it comes out?
That will be out on Fantasy Pros next week.
Excellent. Thor, thank you so much for all your time.
Thanks so much for having me, Luke. Appreciate you.
Thanks so much for hanging out here on the Locked On Vikings podcast. Of course, I am still out of town, so if you were expecting this to be like a big, giant news thing because something major broke and I'm missing it, that's because these are all pre-recorded as of like the end of April, early May. So I'll be back stateside on May 20th and recording podcasts again then. So that Monday you can expect Locked On Vikings to resume 5 days a week as normal. And we'll start with the Everyman series, which is something I am very, very excited about and can't wait to get to. I will see you all for that. And as always, Skull.